let's get started. You may not remember, but it was certainly very bracing for me. We had a call a few months ago when I was asking you, future of business education, future of business, and you kind of challenged me, and the way I got the challenge was that tech's changing everything. It continues to change everything. That's creating a lot of opportunities for business. But the responsibilities are sky high. Business is more accountable for more stuff to more people than ever before. Is that the big picture frame for you on the role of business today?
Well, Jeff, it's great to see you. And at USC, we wear our colors. So, you might want to think about that as our new dean, because I can get you one of these shirts if you need it, and you can put away the Wharton blue. So
actually, I'm wearing I think we'd call this a purple shirt today. It might be
all right. Okay.
But it's a purple shirt.
Jeff, I'm only kidding. I don't mean to be understood. Anyway, welcome to the university. We're very happy to have you. We're lucky to have somebody, of your great prestige and capability running a business school. And on behalf of all of the USC trustees, I think you know how excited we are that you are with us and are part of the university. So thank you for joining USC. I think that when I went to business school at USC, and I have an undergraduate business degree, a BSBA from USC, I graduated in 1986. I think that one of the things looking back, it is so many of the things that I do today and work on as CEO of Salesforce just are not things that I really took classes on at USC, not really through the failing of USC by any means, the kind of things that I took classes on, marketing or organizational behavior or accounting. I mean, some of those things have definitely defined a lot of the things in my career. Certainly the entrepreneur program, which was led at the time by Dick Buskirk and his visionary leadership and work with professors like Tom Amaya and others, I would say that they very much defined my business career. But in recent times, and I think especially as a CEO now of Fortune 100 company, that this is a moment where the things that you do as a CEO are quite different than what we had learned, several decades ago. And you don't have to go very far to really look at that. For example, at USC, I never took a class on gender equality. I never took a class on equality. But it certainly is a major part of what I do every day, and is certainly something that's extremely important to all of my stakeholders, my employees, my customers, my partners. When I look at, for example, not just equal opportunity or equal advancement or preventing sexual harassment or making sure that men and women are paid equally for equal work. This is the modern corporation, that we have to have that level of commitment to equality, or specifically in that case, gender equality. But it's looking back, it's not something that I was really, participating in at USC. So I think that what has happened is that business very much has transformed, it's changed, it's evolved, it has moved forward. And we have to be ready to be in the modern corporation, or as the Business Roundtable really recently said, that the purpose of a corporation has changed.
So can I jump in there with you?
Of course, I'm waiting for you to jump in.
So, you were a prime mover behind the Business Roundtable statement on stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism. As you know, lots of people are a bit skeptical about that, right? It was position taking rather than actionable. How do you feel? Are we ready to be actionable on creating stakeholder capitalism, or is it still an aspiration and we've got a lot of work to do before we can get there?
Well, I mean, that's what I hope I'm doing every day, is to be an example of what stakeholder capitalism is. And I think that when I look at my role at Salesforce, and kind of that's where I was beginning to go with my comments, which is, look, at USC, I was taught Milton Friedman. I was taught to manage for all shareholders, not to manage for all stakeholders. And of course, I don't believe that anymore. I believe that the only way you can have success in today's world is to manage for all stakeholders. Certainly as the CEO of a company like Salesforce, but maybe the CEO of any company, that you have to think about all of your stakeholders. So probably one of the best things we did when we started Salesforce is we put 1% of our equity, 1% of our profit, and 1% of all of our employees' time into a 501c3 charity. It was very easy at the time because we had no equity, we had no employees, we had no products. It was simple. But today, that has really paid out. That idea that a company now that has about $1/3 trillion of market capitalization or 75,000 employees like Salesforce, we have been able to give away $500 million in grants. We run 50,000 nonprofits and NGOs on our service for free. We've done 6 million hours of volunteerism that we pay our employees to do in their local communities. So that was really the beginning of managing for all stakeholders. But really, kind of my comments before, stakeholders are much more expansive than just your community. It's also, all of your employees. And that specifically gets down to, for example, gender equality, which is extremely important, but really the equality of every human being and certainly all of our stakeholders. So that when we're managing our companies, we have to look at, are we managing for every gender? Are we for every race, for every sexual orientation? And as a CEO, are you ready to stand up and get ready for that accountability? And I think that that's starting to manage for all stakeholders.
So I couldn't agree with you more on that, but the responsibility side, to my mind, is even bigger than that. So let's talk about another one of your passions, sustainability. And I know you've led this charge to reforest the world, 1 trillion trees by 2030. But also in the news these days, we hear a lot about energy consumption by tech companies, and that young people are liking Ether rather than Bitcoin because Ether says they can be more energy efficient. When you think about sustainability, do you think about carbon offsets, or do you think it's your responsibility somehow to reduce the energy consumption of the tech sector, or to make radical investments in alternative energy? If you're now a stakeholder with respect to sustainability, what are the important pathways there?
Well, we're kind of covering the major values of a corporation. We're going to hit a lot of them: trust, customer success, innovation, equality, and now sustainability. And when you think about sustainability, number one is, are you net zero? Are you a net zero company? And how are you going to get there? Salesforce is a net zero company and also fully renewable. We're also reducing our emissions over time very dramatically in travel with all of our vendors. All of our vendors have to sign commitments to us for their own net zero commitments and all their own ability to join us in our march towards a more sustainable and, yes, more equitable world. So I think that number one is, are you net zero? This is a really critical part of this march. That's number one. Personally, are you net zero? How about your organization? Salesforce is. Is USC? I actually don't know. I probably should know. Is the business school net zero? I think that it has to start there. And then when we talk about offsets, when we talk about moving to green power, green energy, green materials, the entire sustainability ecosystem, nothing is more important than getting to net zero now. Next week, we're all going to Glasgow to COP26. And look, it's going to be about 6 things. It's going to be about reducing emissions. It's going to be about sequestering all the carbon that has been out there, 100 gigatons of carbon since the first industrial revolution has been emitted. It's going to be about education and really trying to get people to understand the things that they're doing that they could change to become net zero themselves. It's going to be about innovation, something we know a lot about at our business school. Ecopreneurship is probably one of the most exciting things that I'm getting involved with today. And it's also about reforestation, exactly like you said. That is, we've already deforested half our planet. We've gone from 6 trillion trees to 3 trillion trees. Look, this is getting a little bit crazy. We have to be ready to really make a stand for what is it that we're going to be like as a planet in 20 years. What is this, a planet with no trees? Is that where we're going?
So I'm not surprised you're going to Glasgow next week. I mean, the great and good of the world will be there. give me your scoring on the importance of big government deals versus private sector innovation in terms of taking on the sustainability challenge. The other news today or yesterday was that there's this new Panasonic battery that seems to be, that's going to make electric vehicles more efficient. Is it going to be private sector innovation, or is it government deals that's most important when it comes to tackling sustainability challenges?
Well, look, we're in a planetary emergency. That's number one. This is a climate crisis that is impacting everyone, and it's only going to get worse. We can see that. This is especially for the most vulnerable among us. Those who have the least are going to get hurt the worst. You can see that, especially in a lot of developing countries today. Is it a question of ecopreneurship? Is it a question of big companies innovating? Is it a question of governments regulating? Yes, yes, and yes. Is it something that all of us should be doing every day? Absolutely. Does the business school need to have a new sustainability track and to really educate the leaders who are coming out of the business school on how to manage in a sustainable way? Absolutely. So we're in a new world, and we have to look to our values to guide us. And I think that when we think about one of our major goals as our companies or organizations or as leaders, we're trying to make the world more sustainable. How are we going to do that? Well, one of the things that is important to me is that we have the ability to sequester all the carbon that is out there, but also to look at what's going on with deforestation. The reason why that is important is because every trillion trees is 200 gigatons of carbon. I already said we've emitted 100 gigatons of carbon since the first industrial revolution, since using fossil fuels. But this is a key point that we have now emitted by cutting down 3 trillion trees, 600 gigatons of carbon. We had 6 trillion trees on the planet. We currently have 3 trillion trees left. When is that going to stop? Deforestation is still happening at a very high level that we're finally starting to see governments and corporations and organizations of all size planting like the trees that you have behind you, but we need trillions of those trees. We've cut down 3 trillion trees. So it's all related. It's connected.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100% on that. And thanks for having the beautiful golden retrievers in the background.
Yes, they have found my office and they are now taking over the interview.
So we've got a whole bunch of topics to get to in the remaining time. So something that I know you've led on is now sort of virtual work, virtual HQs. If office occupancy post-pandemic, ends up at 70% or 60%, pick your number of where it was before, that's a revolution in the world of work. How are you thinking about making that productive for everybody?
Well, we're going through a massive transformation in business. I'm actually speaking to you from my home, as you can probably tell that the golden retrievers are here, in fact. And, here is my office behind me. And I'm not currently in Salesforce Tower. Now, typically today, at this moment, I would be, but I am not. I was there last week. I'm not currently there right now. So that's true for the majority of my workforce. A very small percentage of my workforce is actually back in the office. We're at home, and we have our families here. We have our dogs here. So it's a moment where business has transformed. It has changed. And how we work and what we're doing has completely changed. So when you look at what the future of work is going to be, I really think it's in 5 points, which is, one is we're going to continue to be working a lot at home. We've trained ourselves at home. People like working at home. We're not all going back. By the way, that's why we bought Slack. We're not going back. And number 2 is our digital headquarters, like Slack. Well, it's a lot more important than my physical headquarters. Look, we're doing this interview on Zoom. I don't even know where you are. You've got a digital background. It's a moment where our digital world, Zoom, Slack, et cetera, is more important than our physical world, the campus. It would be nice if you're sitting there at the campus with the actual tree behind you, but we're in a digital world. And then 3 is, yes, our physical world is still important. You're going to bring students back to the university. We're going to be back in our offices collaborating. Just talked to one of our executives who's a 50-person offsite today in the office. And that's kind of point 4, which is we're going to have events. We're going to have offsites. I was in Los Angeles last week at a conference. I was with one of my customers, at a restaurant. It was outside. I actually had a 40-person dinner in New York City on Thursday night inside, but I had to test everyone before I got in there, which is kind of point 5, which is, I need to know that we're not bringing the virus into the restaurant. So every person who attended, it was 40 CEOs, got together to talk about what's going on right now. Every person had to take a PCR test before they got, to the restaurant. Can we do that? Of course. I'm a pro-tester. I'm pro-test. So I want to get everybody tested before I interact with them or when we all get together. And that would include and then everyone in the restaurant as well. But there's no reason why we can't easily do that. And those 5 things together, being at home, being in the office, making sure that we're having offsites, events, or we're even building a Salesforce ranch, new corporate training center, kind of the old GE Crotonville facility. I'm sure you've been there. And digital certificates to make sure that we're all healthy and that we're tested and we're able to kind of come together. And get to come together safely.
Yeah, so that's clearly really important, but people are pointing to things like reinforced gender inequalities, depending on who takes remote work, or management challenges, career progressions. The benefits to us all of remoteness are pretty clear, but are you worried about any potential negatives, and how do you manage your way through those?
Absolutely. And we're back to equality now as another one of our core values, because women are 2 times more likely to lose their jobs in the pandemic than men. And why is that? It's because of the stresses and pressures, of the family life and how things are revolving around women. So is that something that's broadly understood in business? No, it's not. So if equality is important, we have to get ready to start to look at how are we managing through this and what are we doing and how are we managing for every part of, or I should just say it, as for all of our stakeholders.
Okay, so I just was skimming the chat and questions that have been coming in. No surprise, lots of questions about the role of Silicon Valley, the place of San Francisco, and the vanguard role of California. One narrative right now is that California is too expensive, the taxes are too high, we're going to lose our innovation lead. But on other dimensions like board diversity, California clearly leads the country. Are you still a bull on California and San Francisco? And how does the state and the city and Silicon Valley maintain their leadership?
Well, I think that you have to look at California and say it's one of the greatest states in the union. And yes, it's a home of tremendous innovation and great universities like USC, and also in the Bay Area where we are Stanford, Berkeley. And it's also a hub of capital, of innovation, of expertise. And the idea that Silicon Valley and California are not going to be important in terms of the technology industry is kind of silly. And you look at new companies and where they're locating and headquartering, and there's a lot of alternative narratives about alternative cities. And it's great that other cities can pick up a few companies here and there. But when you look at big companies, we have a lot of big companies moving into San Francisco. Visa is building a major new headquarters right at the Giant Stadium in San Francisco. And San Francisco real estate and commercial real estate and even residential real estate, kind of even in our post-pandemic reality, is sold out. So it remains to be a tremendous place, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I'm a 4th generation San Franciscan, great place to be. And I think that this will continue to be true. But does it mean that there's opportunity for Miami? Is it true there's opportunity for Austin? Or is it true that there's great opportunity for other great cities, and not only in our country, but other countries? Absolutely. And that's part of the digital reality. Because our digital headquarters is more important than our physical headquarters, then if I was starting Salesforce again, like I did in 1999, would the first thing I do go to create my office, or it was at my apartment at 1449 Montgomery Street in San Francisco? No, it would be to be setting up a Slack room and a Slack channel and getting all of my employees onto Slack and getting my digital headquarters together. And that would be the most important thing to me. So the world has changed a lot in 22 years. And I think one of the things that we will carry with us out of the pandemic is the importance of the digital world.
So one of the areas where you're a serious activist philanthropist has been homelessness. Clearly, a crisis both in LA and in San Francisco. What's your big picture view on how we get out of this crisis?
Homes. Homeless people need homes.
So just affordability and housing units. You think that's the story?
I really think it's more than that. This is a complex issue. It's one of the reasons why at the University of California, San Francisco, I funded a major new homeless research initiative, because there's so much misunderstanding and so many misconceptions about what causes homelessness, the role of drug addiction, the role of mental illness, the role of the lack of housing, and all of these things and how they interrelate to the homelessness crisis, not only in San Francisco, not only in Los Angeles, but every major city in our country and in many other countries as well, because you have to think about how are you providing a society that is serving everybody, not just the elites. And in our world, we don't do that very well. We govern mostly for the elites, and we're not really thinking about what are all the societal systems that we're putting in place to take care of people that maybe are not able to function at the level of USC or Wharton or whatever it is. How about everybody else? How are we really bringing everyone into our heart? And that is ultimately what leadership is going to be about in the future, which is it heart-based? How are we really moving forward? Are we really thinking about everyone? And how is that going to take place? And you're right, if you come to San Francisco, and if you've been to San Francisco in the last 10 or 20 years, and you don't think homelessness is a problem in San Francisco, then you haven't been to San Francisco, because it is. So we all have to do that. It's one of the reasons that I led something in San Francisco called Proposition C, where we taxed the biggest companies like mine and Visa and others to pay a small percentage of their revenue to support homelessness. And it's made a major difference. It's only been in place a few months, but the entire effort was just underfunded. And this is a major issue. And I think other cities, counties, states, countries will have to address it in a significant way like this.
Okay, great. Let's bounce back to tech. Lots of questions coming in about the future of tech. So let me ask you about the two big things, AI, how revolutionary is AI? And then second, blockchain. I think most people would say on the AI front that the hype has has dominated the reality up until now. Blockchain seems to be the flavor of the month. Is this linear? Are we in a whole new paradigm with those technologies? What do you think?
Well, no, blockchain is not the flavor of the month. It is one of the most consequential technologies, I think, going forward. And one of the things that not only am I running Salesforce, I have a company called Time. This is a magazine that we produce. And we have a great new platform called Timepieces, which is an NFT platform. And it is built on blockchain, and it has integrated identity and allows users of basically crypto wallets to be able to acquire and trade NFTs on platforms like OpenSea. So that idea that blockchain is moving forward, that we have cryptocurrencies, that we have basically this ability to conduct commerce in new ways, that's very interesting and a pretty big shift in the world. And look, artificial intelligence is also fundamental and consequential in terms of what we're going forward. I think it's Elon Musk's, favorite two subjects, AI and blockchain. But I think when you look at artificial intelligence, look, we've all seen Terminator. We know where this is going. It doesn't take a lot of imagination.
And yeah, I mean, that the dystopic stuff obviously scares lots of people. Are most innovations in the history of the world, in the modern history of the world, we thought we're going to destroy more jobs than they would create, but it ended up the other way. People really think this time it's different. Where do you stand on that? Do you think the machines are going to be so good, most of us are going to have lives of leisure, or do you think there's going to be a new role for humans in a much more machine-driven world?
Well, this is definitely, the prophecy, of machines doing all the work. But listen, let me tell you about reality, right now. Let's just talk about today. in October, 2021, which is if you go to your local restaurant or bakery like I do, or I was in New York last week and I went to my favorite restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant, didn't come out and see me and say, hey, how are you doing? And so at the end, I sought him out. Hey, what's going on? Are you okay? You didn't come out. Are you feeling okay? It's like, I have to be in the back of the restaurant cooking because I can't hire cooks. I can't hire people to clean up. I am like in a serious labor shortage. And that is reality today, that we have a labor crisis. We have a supply chain crisis. We have an inflation crisis. We have a lot of major crises underway in the world in our post-pandemic reality. And as part of that, companies who have gone through maybe a digital transformation, like, for example, right now, I'm wearing some very cool new Adidas shoes. You can't see them, but look, Adidas has gone through a major digital transformation. They're able to sell and market and connect with me in new ways as their customer. Salesforce is fortunate to be able to have built that harness for Adidas, but it's very important. Another example is my neighbor here in San Francisco is Lars Ulrich, the head of Metallica, which is a heavy metal band that you probably know because it's from our generation. He's been doing it for decades, several decades. Just remastered his Black album, came up with a version of it called the Blacklist album, which he had alternative artists record his songs. It's very cool. But if you go to Metallica.com, you sign up, you subscribe, you register with him, you can buy the albums digitally. He has a digital relationship with you. It's also built with Salesforce, of course, because I know a lot about that. But that's very important that Metallica, that Adidas, that companies can connect with their customers and kind of get through this very difficult moment that we've been going through in the last year and a half. And some companies have not been successful. I just saw some earnings reports today. I won't go through who they are because some of my friends are the CEOs, but they did not have good days today. And the reason why is they have not gone through the digital transformation that they need to do to connect with their customers in a new way, to build the next generation platforms and get ready. And yes, is blockchain going to be a part of that? Yes. And is AI going to be a part of that? Yes. And is the cloud going to be a part of that? Yes. And look, we all understand that, but we have to do the work. But it's not just that. It's not just the technology. It also has to be these other pieces. And those Adidas shoes I'm wearing are made with plastic that has been reclaimed from the ocean. They are truly sustainable shoes. That is part of their brand value. That is where we start to see it get connected. So do I trust this company? Are they focused on my success as the customer? Are they innovating? Are they for equality? Are they for sustainability? And that's how I'm choosing my vendors going forward. And that's what I think my customers are getting aligned with as well. It's how I'm also aligning my company, I would say.
Yeah, and as you've said, that's true of your customers. It's true of people who work with you and for you. Another big topic that's come in is CRM and healthcare. Everyone knows just how involved you've been on the healthcare side. Digital health, telehealth, all the stuff we've learned in the pandemic looks really transformative. Everyone's had positive experiences, I think it's fair to say, with that. Is that a new frontier for Salesforce or for other companies to manage digital health?
Well, there's been two chapters for us. One is we're very strong on patient relationship management, running on top of your electronic medical records, building the communication with the patient. When you come into UCSF to our breast cancer center, you're handed an iPad that we've helped build the application. We've actually rebuilt it 3 times. It's been a very interesting case study. We need to do your genetic history, understand your genomics. We have to understand your health history, your family history. All of those things are important to ultimately get you the health you need. That's about patient relationship management, not just electronic medical records. But part 2 of the story is really about the pandemic, because when we built Health Cloud, we did not include contact tracing, which we all know what that is now. We did not include vaccine management. We all know what that is. We didn't build test management. We all know what that is now. So what that means is that dinner I mentioned, for example, last week, where we had the 40 CEOs at the table, plus all the staff and everyone at the restaurant, we all want to get together safely. What that means is that all of that has to be held inside the Health Cloud, not just in the database, because we have to keep track of people's health information to get together safely. It's crazy, but it's true. People have to send me their Q-tips before they can come to dinner. Who would have ever thought that you'd have to send me your Q-tip so that you could come to and have dinner with us? But that's just reality today. And that's why healthcare and health information is more important than ever. And that way we work with so many great health organizations, not just UCSF, but Humana and many others all over the world, to help them to really connect with their customers. And I think corporations are all going to have to stand up health clouds so that they can do that. Universities are too, because to get all those students back, you're going to have to know, have they done this? Have they done that? Have they done the other thing? Whatever your rules are. And it's all health information. It's not just grades in the database. It's also the basic health information of the day.
Yeah, bound to be the case. And in the US, obviously, it's made more challenging by the restrictions about crossing state borders with information and the like, but I'm sure we'll solve that. So we've probably got 5 minutes of your time left, Mark, and there've been a lot of personal questions about you. So I'll give you two.
Let me get my mother in here so she can help.
Okay, so the first one is sort of—
also a USC alum, by the way. Okay,
so maybe that's the answer, but the first questions are sort of back in the beginning, right? You were an entrepreneur in your teens, founded companies, sold businesses while you were still in high school. So what was it about your DNA that made that go? And then the second questions are very contemporary ones about how's the pandemic? How have you been living your life in the pandemic? What do you miss? What are you looking forward to in 2022? So maybe go back and then reflect in a very contemporary way about what life has been like for you during the pandemic, other than presiding over a business and doing an extraordinary job and being a global citizen and all that stuff you do. Pandemic life.
Well, I kind of feel like I'm going to tell you my pandemic life was very simple. I was just at home, and it was a very controlled environment. And I was at home. I would, see some people who I knew were also, healthy, but that was my life. And I think that was probably true for a lot of people. We're trying to take care of ourselves and we're trying to be careful. And this is very important. But then, of course, we started to get vaccinated. We got testing involved. I would say ultimately it was testing that was the biggest breakthrough for me. And the reason why it was a big breakthrough is I could finally get together safely with my friends and my colleagues. And I'll remember we got ready to do our first offsite for Salesforce, and it was November of last year of 2020. And we had got a breakthrough in testing from a tremendous professor at Stanford University, Adam De Lazardo. Is a great company called Visby, and it used to be called Click Diagnostics. He started with this vision of doing PCR tests for sexual diseases, but it turned out that he could repurpose his company very quickly to do PCR tests for the virus and very low cost. So we got these Visby devices and worked with his company, and all of a sudden I could take my top executives and bring them together safely. Wow, that was a breakthrough. All of a sudden I'm like, yes, this is exactly right. I can get together safely with people. And so we started to build a cadence of that, starting small and then getting bigger and bigger. Culminating about a month ago at our Dreamforce conference, where we brought about 1,000 people together using PCR tests combined with antigen tests, and we did it. And
can I interrupt you at that point? So you had 1,000 people in person for Dreamforce. This is normally a 100,000 person event that sells out San Francisco. So, what was that like? That must have felt a little bit weird. I mean, I know everything's going to be hybrid going forward.
Well, we're all restarting our lives again. That's how I feel. We're in a new world. Look, the past is gone. Your life is gone. Everything that was in the past is gone. Now we're building our new world. So we have a new life and we have a new world. And I think for many of our businesses, I recently said this to our analysts, we have new models. We have new business models, new operating margin models. We even have a new management team at Salesforce that our past life is gone. So this gives you the ability to kind of let go of your past and create your future as you want it, to really think about, kind of as a beginner's mind. We talk about beginner's mind. In the beginner's mind, you have every possibility, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Well, this is an opportunity to recultivate your beginner's mind. And that is where we can find some energy and excitement around the pandemic to say, now, what do you really want? What is really important to you as a business leader or as a leader or as a father or a mother or as a brother, a sister, as, where are you and what do you want to be of the future? You can see everything has changed. By the way, that's why we have the great resignation going on. People are just quitting their jobs because they're like, I'm done with it. Or they're relocating. The great relocation is going on because they're like, I actually want to live here. I don't want to live where I was living. So,
okay, so that's
I think these are really critical seminal thoughts about how the future is going to be, in that, you can see that we're restarting. Or I mentioned to you, we had the 40-person dinner last Thursday, but we also had the 50-person offsite today, or the 1,000-person Dreamforce, but we're building back slowly. Hopefully that we're building back better, but we're building back slowly, and we're able to start to bring people back together. And hopefully that's true for the university as well.
Absolutely. Beginner's mind, back to the beginning for you. We got a couple of minutes. What was it like being you? Hard question, obviously, but you were into this stuff. You were an entrepreneur as such a young guy. You came to Marshall intentionally because of entrepreneurship. What were the really big moments in your life?
Oh, that's a big subject. I would say, I can give you one funny story, which is that I got to Burnkrant dorm at USC. I don't know if it's still there. And it was my first day, at the university, and it was 1982. And it's very exciting. And I'm rolling in. And yes, I had my own software company in high school. So I brought that with me to USC because I had to pay my way through USC. So this was my job. And I had brought my computers up and my monitors and so forth into my dorm, and probably like most people do today, actually. But one difference is I have this kind of box with me of a floppy disk, 5.25-inch floppy disk. And I'm in the elevator with someone who turns out to be my roommate at USC, Tim Lin, and also would later become my chief of staff at Salesforce. He's now retired. I just saw him here. I just saw him last week. And he says to me, hey, that's great. Are you you must love music. And what is that? Those are 45-inch records? And I said, no, those are not 45-inch records, Tim. These are 5.25-inch floppy disks. And I'm working here on these different Apple II computer and Atari 800 computer, and I'm building software with some of my friends that I have in high school, and we have a software company. And he just looked blankly, at me, going like, you had a what? It's probably like what you say to people. They go, well, I'm thinking about starting an NFT company. They go, a what? And it's the same thing. But, innovation marches forward, and everything is getting lower cost and easier to use. And those disks don't even exist anymore, nor do those computers. And here we are on the cloud right now, but I still have a computer on my desk, and so do you. And so I think that, that this is really the magic and the joy that, we should embrace every opportunity. We should try to focus on how do we improve the state of the world? How do we make the world better? How do we repair the world? And this is what we can do. We can do our business. I really believe, and I got this at USC, business is the greatest platform for change. And we can manage for all of our stakeholders, and we can innovate. And yes, we can connect to our customers just like we always have, but maybe in new ways. And yes, we can create sustainable businesses. And did we even know that sustainability was important and that we had to be net zero in 1986 when I graduated USC? No. But do we know it now? Yes. So can we put it all into place? Why not? Let's do it.